Tonight, my favorite lawyer at the Trucker Commission gets something wrong, and we want to get it right. It's November 24th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show. Shame on you, you censorious thug. I'm finding this Trucker Commission of Inquiry useful. We're learning things we never knew before that we could never know without the power of this Commission of Inquiry, the power to subpoena people and documents. I mean, in Parliament, we have question period, but it is not called answer period for a reason. At the Commission, though, politicians have to attend. They have to swear to tell the truth, and they're pressed to answer. They're not always doing so. Some of them are clearly lying, although the police witnesses were pretty good, I think. And as we showed you yesterday, we get access to records that are normally kept secret from us, that are normally exempt from, for example, access to information requests, cabinet memos, private text messages between cabinet ministers, like this one, where two cabinet ministers casually talked about sending a military tank to respond to the trucker convoy. Seriously, what a couple of fascists. I think this inquiry is good. I think the evidence is overwhelming that Trudeau had no legal basis for invoking martial law. And really, his shills aren't even really claiming with any enthusiasm that he did. They talk about political reasons and journalistic reasons and how they were being made to look like fools on the world stage. But I don't think anyone is really even pretending that the legal reasons for invoking martial law were met. I'm sure Trudeau, the Prince of Lies, will take that on himself, but I don't think it'll work, actually. So I like this commission, and I really didn't think I would. Commission lawyers are doing a fair enough job, especially given their very tight time constraints. That's something Trudeau has been using against them. He just refuses to release unredacted documents because he knows this commission has an expiry date. Unlike in normal court cases, things can't be delayed while a judge orders someone to hand over better records, or the other move, dumping tens of thousands of pages on the other side without time for them to review them. So it's unfair, but it's fair enough. But, and I've said this several times, the real stars of the commission are the freedom-oriented lawyers. The Democracy Fund's head of litigation, Alan Honner. He has official intervener status at the commission. He's given private confidential documents in advance. He's allowed to cross-examine witnesses, including cabinet ministers. He's doing a great job. But my biggest kudos go to the team of lawyers associated with our friends at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. I think there are 6 or 7 of them altogether. I know Keith Wilson. We've talked to him a lot on this show before, but there are a lot of new faces I didn't know before. For example, Rob Kittredge, who we spoke with just the other day. Eva Chipiuk, who's been working with Tamara Leach in particular. I think there are literally 7 lawyers affiliated with the truckers and the JCCF, and I think they've been the stars of the commission, really, giving it teeth where I'm not sure other lawyers there would have done so. And my favorite lawyer has been Brendan Miller. He's the toughest, the best informed, the most tenacious in the group. I only heard of him from this commission. I didn't know him before. I met him very briefly on the first day of the commission, and he's been the MVP. Good facts, good arguments, good questions for the witnesses. I think he's been running a little hot lately. He lost his cool a little bit when the judge wouldn't give him a speedy ruling on some of Trudeau's blacked out documents, and the judge actually booted him out for it.
Is reconvened. La commission reprend.
Sir, okay, the Commission Counsel has not completed her
I understand, but sir, and your counsel's advised you that.
No,
I know you've directed, you wanted the
I'm sorry,
application.
I'm speaking.
Yes, sir.
The application, if you want to do it, you've been advised it's to be done in writing, not in the middle of the
Sir, we
presentation.
filed 2 motions in
So
writing at your
I'm
direction
sorry.
that you've refused to rule on with respect to the redaction
you're-
of documents from the government of Canada.
You're
That
speaking,
has
I'm
not been
speaking.
ruled on, and they've been
Okay.
filed for
I
days.
will take a break while you're asked to
Sir.
leave. I will return in 5 minutes if security could deal with the council.
Well, Miller didn't like that one bit, obviously.
Canadians are entitled to the truth, and you can't hide behind unlawful redactions in a public inquiry, claiming baseless redactions on staffer correspondence because it may hurt you. made two, actually three technically, written applications with respect to these redacted documents in advance of the ministers testifying. And the commission has failed or refused to rule on them. And one of the other grounds of procedural fairness is for decisions without undue delay. When decisions are not made on procedural issues of this importance without undue delay, procedural fairness of not just my clients, but everyone's is violated. Canadians are entitled to the truth, and you can't hide behind unlawful redactions in a public inquiry, claiming baseless redactions on staffer correspondence because it may hurt you. And that, in my view, is what the government of Canada is doing. And it needs to stop. And had we had a timely ruling on these redactions, this application made orally today would have been entirely unnecessary.
Is it your expectation to continue?
Sorry,
in the
which the
proceedings?
application for Alex Cohen would have been entirely unnecessary?
Correct.
Is it your expectation to continue in the proceedings today?
Yes. Well, it's my client's constitutional right to have legal representation of their choice.
Is there another lawyer as part of the team that could step in for you if you're not allowed?
My client's choice is to have me. And with respect to being thrown out of the building at the direction of the commissioner, there is no jurisdiction to do that either. So it is what it is. We'll wait and we'll see.
Is that your next steps then? You're just going to wait for some response from the commissioner now?
Response more so from security. It's up to security whether or not I'm allowed in the building, and it's up to the commissioner whether or not he'll abide by my client's constitutional right to have the lawyer of their choice and the procedural fairness and constitutional right to be heard before the tribunal.
But look, it's the judge's courtroom. He's trying to balance a lot of things, a lot of lawyers, his own lawyers, each of the witnesses' lawyers, give the judge some leeway. And there can only be one boss in a courtroom, and it is the judge, for better or worse. I think having security escort Miller out of the room was a bit too much. I think the judge could have just ordered him to sit down, but I take all that as a sign that tempers are just a little bit frayed after a month of this. I mean, remember, for every hour the commission sits, there's probably an hour of preparation and follow-up. I bet everyone involved in this has been working 18 hours a day. I'm not surprised. A lawyer fainted the other day.
So you have a phone call at 1300 hours, I think, with Deputy Minister Rob Stewart. He says that there are 300 commercial CMV, that's commercial vehicles.
Yes.
Anyways, a few days ago, Miller had a bombshell. He telegraphed that to us. He said he had a doozy, but he wasn't able to tell the details to us in advance. All the lawyers who have some standing with the commission have to follow certain rules of confidentiality. They are given early access to documents so they can review them and prepare, but in return, they must keep those documents confidential until they're formally released publicly through the commission's website. So we didn't know what this bombshell would be. Well, it was about one of the worst smears against the truckers that happened during the convoy. As we know, the truckers were multiracial, from English Canada and Quebec, people from all walks of life, peaceful, fun, patriotic, the bouncy castles, the hot tubs. Trudeau wanted to demonize them as Nazis, but they just weren't. Here's Ralph Goodale in a text. He's an old liberal hack calling them neo-Nazis. No basis other than his own bigotry. He's projecting. The Liberals knew it wasn't true, but they knew they had to gin up that theory because they wanted to demonize their peaceful opponents. They wanted them to be Nazis. They needed them to be Nazis. They weren't, so they did what they always do. They make accusations and they sent in false flags. Who was it? Who were the Nazis who were there? Some of these photos look like they were taken at the Chateau Laurier, the most prestigious, the most expensive, exclusive hotel in the city. Were the neo-Nazis really staying there? No one else saw that photo, saw that image in that photo. I wonder where it came from. I do know that the Chateau Laurier was where the RCMP were staying. Isn't that funny? They boasted about it in their RCMP WhatsApp groups. That's where they were staying when they were running their ride horses. They were feasting like kings on the taxpayer dime at the Chateau Laurier. I wonder if some undercover cops were there and they were the Nazis. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't be the first time either. I mean, the supply of Nazis in Canada does not meet the demand for Nazis. Trudeau's entire team wanted to demonize the truckers as Nazis. Everyone saw through it. But who was that guy who held the Nazi flag? How could CSIS or the police not know? Like he was the one guy. Well, I bet they do know. I bet they do. Just like the FBI knew all about Ray Epps in Washington, D.C. on January 6th.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? Tomorrow? I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested. Well, let's not say it. We need to go. I'll say it. All right. We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Monument Hill.
President is done speaking. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction.
Yeah, look, we don't know who the Canadian Ray Epps was, but Brendan Miller, the lawyer, said he did. He said it was a man named Brian Fox, who was a senior executive for a public relations firm called Enterprise Canada. Well, that's stunning. Enterprise Canada is a political firm. Maybe it was a false flag operation conducted by a group of political dirty tricksters for, who knows, the government, the Liberal Party. At least we knew who it was who was smearing the truckers. At last, we finally got the name. Here's Brendan Miller raising the subject at the commission.
Were you aware that the first time that the picture of the gentleman all covered in army fatigues with a mask over his face, walking with a Confederate flag through a crowd, it first appeared in an opinion piece in the Toronto Star from someone who actually works for the Liberal Party of Canada? Were you aware of that?
Mr. Commissioner, my friend seems to be giving evidence now.
I'm asking if he's
So
aware
he
of it.
asked a question, and I can guess at what the answer is
Right.
going to be.
Right, okay,
Right.
but there's a presupposition of a fact that's not a.
Yeah,
that's not an evidence.
because you keep interrupting me while I'm trying to ask questions and I'm
No,
running out of time.
Just, please. Okay.
So
I'm not aware of the articles, and I'm not aware of those facts that you mentioned.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Are you aware of a company called Enterprise Canada?
Not specifically, no.
And have you identified the individual, one that it was all over the news, the gentleman that was carrying the Nazi flag? Have you identified him yet?
Mr. Commissioner, as I've said before, the specific details of our investigations have been shared, with Commission earlier. I would not be able to go into more specific details.
So I think that's it.
Right, yeah. No, and I
Thank
take
you.
it, and I take it then, sir, that you know that individual was Brian Fox from Enterprise Group.
I have not said anything of that respect to council. I have not testified to that, council.
He named Brian Fox of Enterprise Canada. Got him. Got the dirty trickster. And not just that, but Brendan Miller wanted to subpoena him, to call him under oath, to ask him all about it. That's a great idea. I mean, remember, this whole Emergencies Act thing was because the Liberals claimed it was violent extremists coming to overthrow the government. Imagine if they had arranged somehow to plant that Nazi protester, like a false flag, and then you catch the guy and he revealed the whole conspiracy. Who set him up to it? Who put him up to it? Now, Brendan Miller had trouble going further on this. The judge wouldn't let him. The judge shut him down. Miller wanted to subpoena Brian Fox, interrogate him. And Miller has his own witness, a live witness who saw Brian Fox that day. Sean Folks is his name. He has an affidavit swearing it's true. Sean Folks. And frankly, Miller wanted to call Sean Folks also as a witness. I don't know. This was extremely exciting. I thought this was an exciting story. Bombshell indeed. And Brendan Miller had so many bombshells this past month, he really did have the goods on so many politicians and bureaucrats and politicized cops. So if Brendan Miller says he's got the proof, and he's willing to say it in this judicial forum and willing to call witnesses, you better believe that I'm paying attention, and every Rebel News viewer ought to. So we ran that story big time, but you know our practice. We like to reach out to the other side just to make sure they have their say in the story too. But really, what's left to ask? Eyewitness, sworn affidavit. Miller has been right every time so far. But I don't know, Brian Fox and Enterprise Canada, they disagreed with this. They were pretty fast. They put out a statement before we even reached out to them. They immediately put this up on their website. Today, in the scope of the Emergencies Act inquiry, Brendan Miller, the lawyer representing Freedom Corp, made an entirely unsubstantiated and deeply offensive accusation against Enterprise Canada principal Brian Fox. For the record, there is no truth to this absurd and despicable accusation. Neither Brian Fox nor anyone from Enterprise Canada was in attendance at the Freedom Convoy protests in any capacity. Mr. Fox was in Toronto for the duration of these protests and had no involvement in them. Now, that's pretty categorical. There's no wiggle room words there. Someone has their facts wrong. Either Brian Fox or Brendan Miller and his eyewitness. Now, Fox's company added some more details later, saying Brian Fox has not been in Ottawa since 2019. Brian Fox has not been involved with the Liberal Party of Canada or Freedom Convoy protests in any way. In fact, I'm told he's a Pierre Poilievre supporter who was last in Ottawa 3 years ago for the Manning Center Conference. It's a conservative conference, but really, a senior executive in a national communications firm, the idea that he would dress up as a Nazi to do a false flag dirty trick at a trucker convoy, it's implausible. Really, you're going to get a senior VP kind of guy doing that? That's the kind of thing that a young college kid might be convinced to do by a dirty trickster. But a businessman in his 50s or 60s, I don't know. Well, Miller was adamant.
So we had made application days and days and days ago. The commission consistently directs that we are to make motions in writing. So we do so. We currently have 2 outstanding. The first is dealing with all of these redactions that the Government of Canada has put on all of the staffers' correspondence, as well as the notes of Ms. Katie Telford, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. They have redacted these documents claiming they are irrelevant or that they are in fact subject to a cabinet confidence, despite the fact that the law is abundantly clear and undeniably clear that cabinet confidence does not apply to political staffers. These include the notes of Sarah Jackson, who is the office manager of Katie Telford, discussing the Emergencies Act, discussing the protest, discussing what they're going to do. These include the email responses from Minister Blair to his own Chief of Staff about why he did not accept the advice of law enforcement to carry out the plan that was before the IRG. The Government of Canada has continuously and every day dropped hundreds of documents on the parties, and the parties are frustrated. It is not just myself. They have tried to turn this entire proceeding into an inquiry about the failures of Chief Slawley, as opposed to actually about the invocation of the Emergencies Act. And my duty to my clients, and my duty as a lawyer, is to uncover the truth. We have also applied, and we applied before I asked the questions with respect to Mr. Brian Fox, to have him compelled as a witness. And we did that in writing. We applied to also now have Mr., I believe it's David Chan, who we found out was the individual who actually took the photos of the gentleman carrying the Confederate flag, of which he is also the photographer for the Prime Minister.
David Chan's not the Confederate.
Well, I would disagree with you if you have you have an official photographer. Well, I understand there's an official photographer.
Yeah, but that's not him.
So
explain to us why you've named Brian Fox.
Because we have a witness in our application who had met the person with the flag, all right, on the day he was running around with it, and can identify him as Mr. Fox.
Who's that person?
It's in the application, and I'm not allowed to say yet because they won't release it to you. Our applications that we have made,
Brendan,
applications that we have made have still not been released by the commission.
Are you worried about getting sued, sir?
No, I'm not. Because guess what? Truth is a full defense, and we also have privileges for things of which we say in a courtroom. And the reason that that exists is so that lawyers can do their job and witnesses can tell the truth. I don't care about Enterprise's little announcement yesterday. I could care less. If they want to bring that, I would be happy to do so and defend it and get discovery and get their records.
What are your odds of getting at the truth on this sidewalk?
Well, I can tell you the odds of getting at the truth, and a commissioner who has no compulsion powers at law directing that I leave a building, a government building where I am counsel, to a client whose rights to counsel are constitutionally protected.
Well, you're challenging his authority.
Well, I understand that, and I'm challenging the lawfulness of what's going on.
All right, I'll bite. Who is this witness? What does the affidavit say? Well, let's take a look at it. I'll read from it. So, affidavit of Sean Folks. He says, I approached the person who was carrying the Nazi flag on January 29, 2022, and I attempted to speak with him. On November 21, 2022, I went onto the website for Enterprise Canada and found Brian Fox's profile thereon, including a photo of him. Attached here too and marked as Exhibit B is a true copy of a screenshot of the profile of Brian Fox from the Enterprise Canada website. I can confirm that Brian Fox is the man I met with the Nazi flag on January 29, 2022. So this guy, this witness, Sean Folks, says he spoke with a Nazi flag guy in January. But I don't think he took any notes. He certainly didn't take any photos. He just sort of saw him in January and spoke briefly with him. And then in November, just a few days ago, he happens to look at the Enterprise Canada website, sees the photo of Brian Fox, and says, that's him. 10 months later. You talk with someone briefly, no notes, no photos, no video. He's wearing a mask. And then 10 months later, you look at a website photo, and who knows how old or accurate that website photo might be. And you say, that's him. Absolutely. I'll swear on a Bible. Now, you're not really an expert at these things. You're not trained in these things, but you're sure of it. Even though the Nazi guy was wearing a mask. How sure are you? How sure are you? How credible is the witness? Who is Sean Folks? Well, his affidavit describes him as a political activist, pages and pages of how he fights political battles, and a bit of a attention seeking in other ways too. In his affidavit, he talks about his father inventing the musical genre of reggae, talks about his accomplished family. I'm not sure what any of that has to do with him himself or Brian Fox or what he saw, but his affidavit sort of paints a picture about Sean Folks as in, is he really a disinterested witness just coming forward with the facts, or is he someone who wants to be part of the excitement, someone with a bit of an axe to grind, someone who wants to be internet famous, wants to be in the fight, someone with political ambitions? It's a bit different, isn't it? But here's a surprise. Sean Folks actually did make a video record of what he saw back when it happened or right afterwards. I wonder if he forgot that he did that. See, when he was in Ottawa at the convoy, he talked to an independent citizen journalist who happened to be live streaming from down at the convoy. Here's a video published back at the time. I'll start with the part where Sean Folks identifies himself. You'll see this is the guy.
You hear that? That's what we're here, guys. Freedom. What's my name? You guys can look me up. My name is Sean, S-H-O-W-N, Folks, F-O-L-K-E-S. Now, when you bring up my last name, you might bring up my sister because she's the head of acquisitions and procurements. Okay, she's buying fighter jets for the military. Paula Folks Dallaire. You might bring up my dad, John Folks, my father. And if you bring his name up, he's the founding father, the guy who started reggae music. It's
really?
My dad. Yeah,
really?
Man.
Holy crap.
Yeah, Oh Carolina, that's my dad's song. And you can find out the history of it. Because now people can't say, oh, you're bullshitting, because they can do their Google research.
So that's him. He actually seems like a nice guy. I bet he's a Rebel News viewer. He mentioned that reggae thing, didn't he? He's proud of that. And, you know, he got some things right. He pointed out the military snipers in Ottawa. That was true. And he talked about drones overhead. That was true also, police drones. And believe it or not, the Canadian Armed Forces drone too. He sounded a bit wild saying it then, but we now know it's 100% true.
And you know what's the interesting thing? Is you guys have no idea how they're watching us. We're being watched by drone right now. I have these really crazy binoculars. I spotted 3 snipers.
Really?
Yeah, that could, fall asleep behind his trigger and pull that trigger and one of us is dead, right?
Yeah.
Why do they got I'm all for Canadian snipers if they're against our enemies, but the last time I can't remember the last time Canadian had enemies.
Yeah.
I like this guy, and he's living proof that this was a diverse group of Canadians, these truckers. Sean Folks himself was certainly no Nazi, but let me get to the important part. Here's a full minute where Folks describes his encounter with the Nazi guy. Very interesting.
So the media says there's racism here. Is there racism?
Okay, let me tell you something about that. It's funny that you ran into me of all people.
Apparently.
Okay? I was here the first day of Ground Zero. I actually spoke on stage. I actually saw the guy with a swastika flag.
So it was a real thing.
It was a real thing, but this is what they didn't tell you. He was going around with the flag saying, "Is this what you want for our country?"
Really?
This is what Trudeau is going to turn our flag into if we allow this draconian fascism to continue. Is this what you want the Maple Leaf to be replaced by? This is what we're heading to, people. And he was speaking with a European accent. So I'm thinking that he came from a country that knows about fascism, because we don't know it. We're just oblivious to it, and we don't see the slow incremental movements that they're making towards this total, I don't know even what to call it.
So the Nazi thing was apparently ironic, as in a warning of what Trudeau was going to do to Canada. What an absurd thing to say. That sounds like a lie told by the Nazi guy. I mean, I'm sure he did say that lie to Sean Folks. Imagine showing up with a mask and a Nazi flag and then claiming you're just being ironic and you're accusing Trudeau of that. You're not trying to taint the whole protest. I don't buy the Nazis' excuse. Obviously, it was a false flag designed to smear the truckers. But did you hear that key part? The Nazi flag guy spoke to Sean Folks in a European accent, by which I'm sure Folks meant Eastern European, like Russian or Polish or Czech or something, and claimed to be talking about fascism from experience. Okay, maybe. But whatever the substance of the Nazi flag guy's comments, if he spoke with an accent, well, Brian Fox was born in Windsor, Ontario. Doesn't have an accent at all, actually. I'm not saying Sean Folks lied in his affidavit. I'm saying it's much more likely that he forgot 10 months later about that detail of the accent, or more to the point, he's never met or spoken with Brian Fox. He just looked at a photo of him, so he simply didn't know that Brian Fox does not speak with an accent. I mean, seriously, he never even saw the face of the Nazi guy, and he was looking at a corporate website photo of Brian Fox. Imagine trying to compare those two things 10 months apart with great certainty. What a joke. If he really did meet Brian Fox in person, he'd have heard the Canadian accent and known it wasn't him. Couldn't have been him. Take a look at this.
You ever made a mistake?
Everyone has made mistakes.
I make tons of them all the time. That's how I learn.
Yeah.
The government's making mistakes, but they're not learning from them.
You're right.
Yeah, he's right. Do you ever make a mistake? Of course, we all make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's right. He's right. That's sort of obvious. Sean Folks made a mistake. But Brendan Miller made a mistake too. I hate saying that because Brendan Miller has been the MVP in these Trucker Commission proceedings. He's asked the best questions in the best ways, but this wasn't the best. This was wobbly. To begin with, Brian Fox immediately denied it was him, denied he was in Ottawa. He was in Toronto. He said he hadn't been to Ottawa in years. He said he's a pro-conservative guy, if that matters. And really, do you really think a senior business executive would do a dirty trick prank like this, even if he was motivated by malice, and even if he was in town and had the opportunity? And the proof, a foggy memory of a guy who briefly spoke with him 10 months ago and then was shown a corporate PR website photo of him. Come on, that's your affidavit? And that's the basis you're calling a man a Nazi guy in public? Now, we reported Brendan Miller's accusation when it was made because it was news, very newsy. It was made in a judicial inquiry about matters in the public interest. It just was news, and we immediately published Brian Fox's refutation of it. But I won't lie, even though a flat denial is pretty powerful, I was still tending to believe it. Miller has done just such a good job this past month, and I couldn't believe he would say something so powerful without some real evidence. We ran Brian Fox's response because that's the journalist thing to do. But I got to tell you, I still believed on the balance of probabilities that he was the guy. I mean, I just couldn't believe Brendan Miller would say something without proof. But I have to say, I cannot say that now. Now that I've read the affidavit, the foggy memory of a guy 10 months ago who said on a contemporaneous video that the Nazi guy had a European accent, that's it? That's all you got? That's all your evidence? No. There's a reason why police traditionally have had a lineup of 5 or 6 similar-looking suspects when an eyewitness is asked to identify them, because it's bloody important to get the right guy, more important than how it was treated by the commission. No, it's not enough, and it's not right. I know what it's like to be called names unfairly. I'm Jewish, but because I'm conservative, you know, here's an example. The disgraceful Gerald Butts, the advisor to Justin Trudeau, his friend since childhood. I mean, I'm called a Nazi. Trudeau's corrupt henchman, disgraced lobbyist. I'm a Jew, but he calls me a Nazi. Now, I can brush that off more easily than most. It really is absurd to call a Jew like me a Nazi. But Brian Fox, I can only imagine what it's like to be tarred that way. He had nothing to do with this whole thing. He wasn't even in the city, but some foggy memory guy says for sure it's him, so it's him? Look, part of Rebel News is championing the cause of freedom. That's why we support the truckers. That's why we support the trucker lawyers, including Brendan Miller and his great team. If you don't know, Rebel News constantly promotes the JCCF, and I always buy tickets to their fundraising dinners. Their boss, John Carpe, will be a speaker at our big Rebel News Live conference in Calgary this weekend. I love the JCCF, and as you've heard me say all month, my favorite new lawyer there is Brendan Miller. He's doing a great job at the commission, but he got this one wrong. Maybe he just wanted it too much, so he didn't look at countervailing facts. Maybe he just knew in his bones that the government did set this up and he forced the facts to fit his theory. I don't know. I can imagine he's under stress and pressure and is sleep deprived too. We like the JCCF and Brendan Miller, but we also have a duty to our viewers to tell the truth, a duty to our own conscience. Oh, believe me, we wanted to find out the identity of that Nazi guy as much as Miller did. And when he made the accusation, we reported it with some gusto, but now 3 days later, we can't. It's just obviously not true. Miller raised the question again obliquely today with Chrystia Freeland. He didn't name Brian Fox, but he said the Nazi flag waver was a government plant. I do think the Nazi flag waver was a government plan, because if he were real, we would know his name, address, phone number, and bank account like we know that information for 1,000 truckers and their donors to the GoFundMe. The banks would have frozen the Nazi flag waver's bank account. The media party would be doing biographies on his whole family and all his friends, and we know everyone he'd followed on social media. The fact that we don't know who the Nazi flag guy is tells me that he was Canada's version of Ray Epps, a government plant, an undercover cop maybe. But I'll tell you, it was not Brian Fox. I think Brian Fox deserves from Brendan Miller a retraction, a correction, and an apology, not just for the sake of Brian Fox's reputation, but for the sake of Brendan Miller's reputation. Here at Rebel News, we work hard to get it right. You know, when you publish 20 stories a day under time pressure, you're not always going to get it right. A few times a year, we get it wrong. And once in a while, we have to apologize, eat some crow. It is not tasty, but it is the right thing to do. And it's also a message. If we apologize when we make an error, that's a signal that you can trust what we do and say the rest of the time, because we'll admit it when we're wrong. Saying sorry once in a while actually improves your reputation for accuracy the rest of the time. We've been the top boosters of Brendan Miller and his team all month. And I've literally never met or heard of Brian Fox until 3 days ago. But we owe it to our readers to correct the record, and to our viewers, and to call upon our champion, Brendan Miller, to correct the record too. Brian Fox did not do that terrible thing. And just as it is wrong for the truckers to be demonized for political purposes of Trudeau, it's wrong for our side to do the same to Brian Fox too.